Well, folks, you likely know that in Washington today, we have a plan, I guess, according to Nancy Pelosi, very soon. We're going to have a meeting with her, the Democrat caucus in the House, and probably going to send over the articles of impeachment later in this week. But what I want to talk about today in the first five, because I'm so tired of impeachment, is to really talk about on this Deep Dive Monday a deeper question about what it is that happens, how we end up in Washington with two such strongly varying viewpoints about things like the American military's decision to kill Soleimani, the Iranian general, murderous, blood on his hands of hundreds of American soldiers who died. And in addition to the hundreds who died, many, many more maimed, wounded, just American soldiers, not to mention his backing of his own government, the Iranian government's killing of its own citizens, supporting that action in other countries, and generally having just inflicted mayhem on the world since at least 9/11. And this is the person that the American left is so upset about, the idea that the American military decided to end General Soleimani's life. I will tell you, as an example of why I say the left is upset, there was actually talk of Adam Schiff, the Democrat member of the U.S. House from California, who pretty much led the first hearing about the impeachment of President Trump. He is calling for hearings in the House to talk about the decision by America to take out Soleimani. What I want to talk about on the first five is this. Why is it that the American leftists in this country, are so regularly siding with America's enemies? They defend Iran. They defend Soleimani. They question the legitimacy of taking out a guy who has killed American soldiers and whose life story is one of murder, mayhem, evil, just almost unspeakable level evil. And yet we're having Pelosi's of the world and other leftists in Washington arguing to the American public that maybe we shouldn't have done this. This was a bad thing. One of the primary differences between the Republican and the Democrat Party, and I like to say parties, the left-wing worldview and the American worldview, is this. The problem the American left has is they simply have lost the ability to say out loud, to express as a basis for their reasoning, that the idea of good versus evil exists. They cannot label anything evil. They treat so many issues as though it's not good versus evil or right versus wrong. It's the competing parties, competing interests. Maybe at one point we like this character, but now we like this character, this country. They've lost that core discernment, or at least the willingness to say out loud in the American political conversation, the discernment of the idea that good and evil exist. This is not a new thing with the American left. When Ronald Reagan was talking tough, we decided we just simply had to stand up against Russia. And he actually gave the famous speech about tear down this wall. You had leftists wringing their hands in just fear and outrage and upset. The idea, who are you to say that they're evil? You can't say something's evil. You can't call the communist government evil just because they repress their people and shoot and kill them if they try to leave their country. Who are you to say that? This idea of the American left's failure, it's either that they don't discern good and evil, which I think is the problem, or they do know that good and evil exist, but they're somehow too intellectual, too superior, too elevating the idea of secularism and intellectualism as the most important qualities in leadership in this country, that they will spend time arguing about whether or not it was a good idea for America to take out Soleimani. Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker, continues in making remarks about how it is very, very questionable whether President Trump should have authorized taking out Soleimani. But you have the American left's inability to admit and say good and evil exist. They couldn't do it with Ronald Reagan back in that era of time when we were standing up and saying tear down this wall in the 80s. They couldn't do it in Venezuela when we had the socialist takeover in Venezuela, very near communist, but socialist takeover in Venezuela. They criticized anyone who challenged or questioned the repressive conduct of Hugo Chavez and later Maduro, validating their idea that socialism is a great idea and Chavez is nationalizing industries and taking more and more control, taking freedom away from his people. The leftist mindset cannot agree there's anything wrong with that. They can't agree that evil exists. They can't agree some things are evil. So they couldn't do it with Reagan. They couldn't do it in Venezuela. And they can't do it today with Iran. If you're a regular listener to the show, you know we've talked many, many times about the country of Iran and the fact that when the Iranian Revolution happened in 1979, the Shah was overthrown, that the Iranian mullahs put into place a constitution. The very constitution of the country of Iran calls for, mandates the country and the people of Iran to commit jihad for the purpose of ultimately inflicting Islam on the world. If you can't see that and recognize it as evil, you really have no place anywhere in the United States government. But this is where we are. We have the Democrats in this country, the radical left in this country. And to be clear, the radical leftists have taken over the Democrat Party. It's not like there's a moderate wing of the Democrat Party that dominates. The radical leftist wing of that party dominates that party. And you have them, therefore, unable to acknowledge that good and evil exists, unable to condemn the Iranian regime, a regime committed to forcing its citizens to commit jihad, a regime committed to using the money that is sent to them by Obama and America to fund the proxies that went around the world, killing American soldiers and others. So there was a statement in the U.S. House I wanted to share with you in just a moment. This is one of the clips I sent to Matt, the extremely wonderful producer, whom I really appreciate. To be really clear, if you're watching a show for the first time, this is not my real studio. We are on vacation, or we're out in visiting in California, visiting family. This is the West Coast headquarters of America Can We Talk. It's really just a fabulous thing. I'm very grateful to have Real News PR and Matt Stoker, my producer, being willing to broadcast a show and do this show, allow me to continue doing it while we're traveling, do it remotely. So I want to turn to Matt the Wonderful and ask him to play a clip. This is a member of Congress, Representative Brian Mast, who lost both of his legs to an IED, which is the kind of thing that Soleimani was known for, this is a person harmed by Soleimani's evil, responding to the Democrat denouncement in the U.S. House of the killing of Soleimani. This is Representative Brian Mast.
Make no mistake, Madam Speaker, this resolution is about the killing of Soleimani. He was a terrorist, no different than al-Baghdadi, than Zalkari, than bin Laden, than Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He was the head of a designated terrorist organization, no different than ISIS or al-Qaeda. And he was responsible for the deaths of our men and women. And I know most in here haven't seen or smelled or touched that kind of death, but let me tell you about it. They were burned alive inside of their Humvees. Their lungs were scorched by the flames of the explosion. The vehicle fragments were blown into their skulls. Some of them were paralyzed. Some of them had their arms blown off. Some of them had their legs blown off. Some of them will never see again. Some of them will never be recognized again by those who knew them previously. Each and every one of them, they are the credible explanation for deleting this terrorist target from our world. And no doubt, it is dangerous to take out a terrorist target. But a coward is somebody who lacks the courage to endure danger. And this is the fundamental difference in voting yes or no here. If you vote no, you understand that we would be justified to kill 100 Soleimanis for just one of our heroes that have been killed by him, and the danger would be worth it. For those who vote yes, they see that he has killed hundreds of our service members, but can still not find the justification to kill him because, unlike our fallen heroes, they lack the courage to endure danger. I yield back.
God bless that man. Representative Mast lost both his legs in Afghanistan serving in our military. And this is at the hearing in the U.S. House deciding the Iranian resolution to, the supposed war powers resolution to limit President Trump in his actions against Iran, which has no actual legal basis, power, or ability to do anything. It accomplishes exactly zero. Nothing, nada. And the Democrats know this. To Democrats, they're virtue signaling to their base by passing this resolution, which has no impact at all, but they think they're sending a signal to the base. Don't worry, we're going to punish that bad guy. Folks, I have to tell you, this matters in this year 2020. The 2020 elections, you have one of the two main parties in our country in Washington who cannot understand the evil represented by Soleimani, cannot understand the evil represented by the country of Iran, not by the people, but by their government. And because they have no discernment, no understanding, no capacity to recognize good and evil, to recognize the difference in a country like America, founded on Judeo-Christian values, standing up for the rights and freedom of the individual, founded on the idea that we have rights from God because we were born, and that we have a right to live in freedom, and that we sometimes help other countries move toward that and to throw off oppressors. They can't understand the difference between America's military and the Iranian regime, which happily endorses, funds, supports, and encourages its own military to kill innocent people. And they can't tell which is the better one to follow. I'm telling you, folks, it's dangerous, dangerous time in this country that we have Iran on the loose, other extremist Islamic countries in this world, and one of the two political parties in Washington is morally dead, cannot discern good and evil, cannot figure out that the idea of standing by America is the only way to stop people like Soleimani. And that, my friends, is today's First Five.